When you think of Africa, what's the first word that comes to mind? For many, it's poor. A continent that needs aid. A continent that is always behind. But I'm here to tell you a simple truth. Africa is not poor. Africans are struggling, and those two things are not the same at all. Africa is the world's second largest continent. It holds over 30% of the world's known mineral resources. Vast fertile land, oil, gas, gold, cobalt, lithium, diamonds, and one of the youngest populations on Earth. So the question we should be asking isn't why is Africa poor? The real question is, why do Africans struggle in a continent that is so incredibly rich? Let's start by defining what poor actually means. Poverty is often confused with a lack of resources. But poverty isn't just about what you have. It's about who controls it, how it's managed, and who ultimately benefits from it. A country can be overflowing with resources and still have a population living in poverty. In fact, some of the poorest countries in the world are sitting on some of the richest land. So, when we say Africa is poor, we're using the wrong language. We're misdiagnosing the problem. Africa is resource-rich, but the systems in place are failing the people. Think about a farmer with a huge, fertile field who doesn't have the tools to plant, the knowledge to grow, or a market to sell his crops. Is the land poor? No. The system around him is failing him. That's the situation for many across the continent. So, let's stop saying Africa is poor. It's a rich continent with struggling people, and understanding that difference is the first step toward finding real solutions. Let's be clear about the facts. Africa so bears 90% of the world's platinum and chromium. It holds about 60% of the global arable land that has yet to be farmed. It has major reserves of oil and natural gas, essential for powering industries worldwide. And what about the minerals that power our modern world? Cobalt, lithium, manganese are critical for the technology we use every day. The smartphone you're likely watching this on, the electric cars that represent the future of transportation. The entire global energy transition. Africa is at the very center of all of it. The world needs Africa's resources to function and to evolve. So again, the problem is not an absence of wealth. The wealth is there, buried in the soil and flowing beneath the ground. The problem lies in what happens to that wealth once it's extracted. It's a story of potential versus reality. And the gap between the two is where the struggle of the people begins. So why do ordinary Africans struggle to afford basic necessities like clean water, healthcare, and education? It comes down to systems, not the soil. First, let's talk about weak institutions. Many African states inherited colonial systems. These systems were never designed to develop the people or build a thriving society. They were designed for one purpose: to extract resources as efficiently as possible for the benefit of a colonial power. After independence, the leaders changed, but in many places, the fundamental structures remained the same. The machine kept running, just with new operators. Second, leadership failure. Too often, leadership has been about holding on to power instead of serving the people. It's been about personal survival instead of a national vision. It's been about accumulating personal wealth instead of driving national growth. Now, this isn't a problem unique to Africa, but its effects have been far more damaging here because the institutions meant to check power are often weak or non-existent. When you combine extractive systems with self-serving leadership, you get a recipe for public struggle, no matter how rich your land is. And third, economic dependence. Many African economies are stuck in a colonial era pattern. They export raw materials like cocoa beans, crude oil, or uncut diamonds, and then they import finished products like chocolate bars, gasoline, and jewelry. This means very little value is added locally. Few industrial jobs are created. The economy remains constantly dependent on fluctuating prices set by external markets. Essentially, Africa does all the hard labor of digging up the resources, but others do the finishing work and take the biggest share of the profit. This cycle keeps nations in a state of dependency, always selling cheap and buying expensive. Now let's talk about aid, debt, and the illusion of help. Over the past several decades, Africa has received trillions of dollars in foreign aid. Yet, across the continent, infrastructure often remains weak. Education systems are struggling to keep up. Healthcare is severely underfunded. Why? Because aid often treats the symptoms, not the underlying disease. It might fund a new hospital wing, but won't fix the broken healthcare system that can staff it. In so many cases, aid can even make things worse. It can weaken accountability as governments become more responsive to foreign donors than to their own citizens. It can encourage dependency, stifling local innovation, and it can allow bad leadership to survive without making necessary reforms. Because the aid money keeps flowing regardless. When aid isn't enough, debt fills the gap. But this debt comes with strings attached, with conditions that can limit a country's economic choices. The result is a vicious cycle. Borrow to survive, struggle to repay, and then borrow again just to stay afloat. It's a trap that makes genuine, independent development incredibly difficult. So what is the real problem here? The real problem is not the African people. It's not a lack of effort or a lack of intelligence. The real problem is how Africa is organized and governed. Africa's challenge is structural, it's political, and it's institutional. The wealth is there, the human potential is there, but the systems are failing to connect the two. Until Africa builds strong, transparent institutions that serve the public, not just the powerful, until it develops local industries to process its own resources and create value at home. Until it prioritizes education that solves African problems, not just mimics foreign models, and until its people can effectively demand accountability from their leadership, the struggle will continue. This would be true even with all the gold, oil, and diamonds in the world. The richest soil cannot feed a family if the system for farming and selling is broken. So let's be clear. Africa is not poor, but mismanagement can make even the richest house feel empty and cold. The future of Africa doesn't lie in pity or in another round of aid. It lies in honesty, in deep-seated reform, and in taking responsibility. This isn't about blaming outsiders alone, and it is certainly not about blaming Africans themselves. It's about understanding the complex, difficult truths, because only the truth can create lasting solutions. The narrative of a poor Africa has been told for too long. It's time for a new story, one based on the great Africa reality. If you believe Africa deserves honest conversations, not simple slogans, subscribe to the great Africa reality, because Africa's story should be told with clarity, courage, and respect.